Welcome back. This is the first new moon update of 2024, and the first one we've got coming up is a cracker. It's a new moon in Capricorn at 20 degrees in the sign of Capricorn, and it brings in so many patterns that I think are coming up in 2024. It's almost like, if you throw a pebble in a pond, how you get ripples. It's like this is one of the it's like a ripple foretelling some of the events coming up in this year ahead. So we're already getting the rippling effect of the Chiron and North Node conjunction. We're already getting that sort of like faint before ripple of the Uranus and Jupiter conjunction. And there's so many other things. So in this shortish video, I say shortish because if you know me, you know it's probably not going to be that short. I'm going to be looking at the exact events, astrological aspects that happen immediately on the day before the new moon. So there's a few things going on that kind of really lead into the energy of it. And then take a snapshot of the new moon and then also consider some of the aspects that are also happening after it. There's a lot going on this day, in particular, some very sweet aspects and a couple of very challenging ones. And then if you're interested, now this isn't for everybody, but if you're interested in even deeper diving in terms of using named asteroids and mythical named asteroids, then stick around for part 2, where I look at some of the mythical and named asteroids that are impacting this particular new moon. So for instance, there's this really great website called serenu.com. And you can put in the time, date, and birth, or, the event details. So I've put in the details of the new moon, and it will bring up over, I think, 1,000 different key asteroids and trans-Neptunian objects and Uranian points and things like that, all sorts of additional astrological info. And then you can see what's playing into the patterns. And we've got this grand square lineup with some other asteroids. So yeah, I'm going to be exploring that, because these asteroids, I always think they add, they almost take a 3D chart and turn it 5D. They add something so much more into a reading. And actually that's the way I do my work with the clients I work with. I look at their core charts, but put in some named asteroids according to what they want to know. It's a really interesting side of astrology. Not all astrologers enjoy it, but I find it very, very useful. For those of you that are new to the channel, hi, my name's Louisa Munson. This is Feel Good Astrology. The whole purpose of this is to use astrology to help us feel better. Now, obviously, we've got some very challenging things coming up in this year ahead. And some of it might include a little bit of pain, a little bit of anxiety, sort of deep diving into some of our old patterns, as we notice that some of the patterns going on in the world are also shifting, as above, so below, and all that. But even when I'm talking about some of these trickier aspects, there's always this sense of where that's leading us. And, if I use astrology in any way, shape or form, it's really to help people find greater freedom, greater clarity, and a greater sense of joy. And I think we need to be able to face the truth of what's going on for us personally and in the world, to be able to find that sense of freedom. So if that sounds like you, then stick around. Right, let's have a look. So let's bring up this chart right now. So what I'm looking at here, let's go through this. So you've got the new moon in Capricorn at 20 degrees 44. If you've got anything at 20 degrees, or say from 18 degrees to 22 degrees in the cardinal signs, which are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, then this new moon is absolutely pulling into your cosmic coding. If you're born at with the sun there, or if you've got the moon there, or one of your key angles, this is going to be kind of popping in your chart. And that brings me to something, actually. I wonder how you'll use the new moon energy. There's so many different ways that you can. Lots of people do new moon ceremonies. There are people that get together in groups. Personally, I tend to set my alarm. I write myself some intentions and start thinking about it leading up to the new moon. And then I usually find some way to be sacred around the time of the new moon, whilst also in a meditative state. And for me, I'm not one of these great big sort of meditators that gets calm. But for me, I have to sing my way into it or go for a nice walk, to get into those lovely alpha brainwave states. But yeah, I just focus on the outcome. These are really, really great times to think about a new start, think about a new way of being. I really like it. I mean, one of the themes for this year, actually, sorry, a little bit of a diversion. One of the themes for this year, I think, is to focus on, I did this at the end of last year, we had the Mars Chasmy. That's one of my biggest videos that people have watched in terms of, when Mars came round in the exact moment of the conjunction with the sun, it creates this very, very strong energy, an impulse. And of course, we have these chasmies with the new moon each month. Sometimes we have 2 new moons in a month because obviously the moon cycle and the actual monthly cycle are different lengths. So, we have these interesting moments. In fact, I think we've got 2 in December of 2024. But the exact moment that the moon aligns with the sun is a very, very powerful point. And if you think about it, the moon appears to disappear. There's no moon. And I always think of a black hole and the energy of nothing, and the fact that, from nothing comes everything. Like if we think about all our creation myths, I say myths, you might get a bit peed off with me for saying that, because lots of people believe the official narrative of how everything has happened, Big Bang, this, that, and the other. And, like black holes suck everything out and destroy everything, and then we have these big bangs. Really the sun and the moon and the sun moon cycle are mimicking that. We have this full moon where we've got the brightness, we've got everything showing up in a really, really strong way, and then the new moon, we've got that nothingness where actually anything can show up. I always think the new moon, that sense of a blank canvas, is really, really strong. And to me, it reminds me of the magician's hat, the idea of, you can pull anything out of a magician's hat. You put your hand in, you don't know what's going to come out. But if you use your God-given focus or your divine right focus or whatever your belief systems are, I don't want to, commit myself to anything, but whatever your, the way you believe about the world, whatever you focus on, you can really create something with this energy. And I advise that you do use that energy. I think it's really helpful. I don't do it quite the same way these days. I've got 3 children, quite young. And sometimes, if you've got a full moon happening in the middle of, or a new moon happening in the middle of the night, if I was to get up, they would all wake up and go, "Mummy, what are you up to?" and kind of destroy it. So, I do think you can focus on what you're ready for whilst going to bed, and then focus on it when you wake up. So wherever you are, even if you can't really get down at that moment in time to get your sacredness on, I think there's so many different ways that you can do this. But anyway, how you celebrate it or use this energy is your business, isn't it? So let's talk about what energies are showing up. If there are waves of energy, what kind of waves are they that we can catch the flavor of and use for our creative purposes? So immediately before the new moon, and here's the chart here, and you can see the sun and the moon are 20 degrees 44 in the sign of Capricorn. Immediately before the new moon, the moon goes into a square with Chiron. So this is, a few hours before. So you can see the moon is here and Chiron is here, 15 degrees. So like on the day of the 11th of January, the moon is around here and is making her journey towards the sun. Now this square to Capricorn, this square to Chiron is really quite telling. I always think Chiron brings up our wounds, our sore points, the things that sometimes grab us and we can't quite let go of. It's that feeling of rawness where there's something that just can't quite heal. That's not to say you can't heal it. The story of Chiron, I think, is a really great metaphor as to how we can actually transcend things. We actually have to kind of rather than seeing our pain as something separate from ourselves, it's almost more important to make ourselves vulnerable to it so we can really feel it, realize it doesn't kill us, and move beyond it. All the time we hold our pain separate from us. We're looking at it as if it's, some kind of trophy, and it's hanging on our wall, reminding us all the time that there's that thing, that we feel a bit sore about. But anyway, if you are based in the same time zone as me, I'm living in Portugal, so it's a European time zone, UK time zone, London time zone. This moon square Chiron is happening overnight. And if you're in America, it's happening the night before the full moon. So just be very aware of what you're going to bed with, not what or who, but like the emotions that you're going to bed with. If you're feeling really sore about something, find some way to write about it, let it out, don't harbor it. Maybe just observe what you're feeling and say, okay, well, that's as good as it is right now. And that's still okay. Any form of acceptance of what you're feeling could be quite helpful, because then you're not resisting the energy that the moon is bringing into this new moon period. Then the moon makes a trine to Uranus. And this is really right before the new moon, because as you can see, the new moon here, the moon and the sun are in a lovely trine to Uranus. It's quite a tight trine. I love this, because Uranus is obviously quite a key planet in this year ahead. Uranus is creating quite a bit of magic when Jupiter comes into the conjunction with it. So yeah, this moon trine Uranus that's happening right before the new moon, I see it as really being a dreamer's aspect. It's giving us this sense that we can become really free of what is going on for us emotionally. We've got this opportunity to feel as free as we want to feel, really. I always think Uranus can happen very suddenly, very quick. It can kind of transcend time and space. It almost renders time, space null and void. It's that instantaneousness, that telepathic quality. I'm actually a channel that uses astrology rather than an astrologer who channels, I think. And for me, when something comes into my mind, it's there before I can even think about the words to describe it. The feeling of it, it's multisensory. And I think Uranus here is a channeler's planet. So these flashes of insight, about your emotions, these flashes of insight as to how you want to feel are really, really strong and very, very real. So again, you might want to prepare for the new moon before the night before. You might choose to write down what you're ready to accept straight away. What emotional changes would you be absolutely thrilled to get some control over or to get some freedom from in the time of this new moon? And, it doesn't necessarily have to be about your feelings. I've gone there because the moon is very much about our psyche, our emotional, our psychological makeup. But obviously the sun is there as well. At the time of the new moon, we've got the sun and the moon together. That's your psyche and your personality together. It's your potential. So are there some quick flashes of insight you're hoping to find freedom on? Is there a business idea you're wanting this new spark of something to arrive? This is a very sort of like telepathic opportunity. So yeah, it's a very sort of dreamy thing. And then also what's happening on the day before the new moon, we have, first of all, the sun, I think, going into a T square with the north node here and the south node there at 20 degrees 13. And obviously the sun keeps moving a little bit as the moon is coming into this exact conjunction. And then later, and just before the moon makes it to the sun, the moon makes this exact T square with both the north and south nodes. What I really think about this is we've got this opportunity to work from our sacred design. I always think the south node really brings in something sacred about who we were or who we might have been. I guess a lot of that depends on whether you are somebody who really believes in past lives or future lives, even if we're going to mess around with time and stuff. do you believe in past lives? Do you believe at least that, you develop throughout your own life? We could, if you don't believe in past lives, this might be an echo of the skills that you were born with. So however you think about the South Node, one way we could consider this is that it represents an energy that we have been quite at one with at some point. It's an energy that we understand, an energy field that we understand, maybe a matrix of skills that we have some competency in. Maybe it's something emotional or psychological that we've actually resolved years ago and forgotten about. I always think there's a level of mastery, and it might represent, the South Node might represent something that you keep getting pulled back into, but you no longer need to be there. It's not really for you. You've already done this. So, the new moon in its connection, this exact square to the South Node, for me is indicating that we're feeling challenged and frustrated by being almost sort of pulled back into a past situation, pulled back into something that should have been left to dissolve, disintegrate, and disappear. And yet it still feels like maybe some of the skills that we had during that time are needed right now, and the frustration of it. I always think squares are very frustrating. And then obviously we've got the new moon, that both the sun and the moon in an exact square to the North Node, here. So we've got this whole T square. And what I really see there is that we're being, we've got the frustration of feeling like we have to move forwards. That there is almost like a pair of hands behind our back pushing us forwards a little bit, and we're a little bit reluctant. We're not quite ready. We're feeling like we definitely do want to make this step, but on the day of the new moon, there is this very strong kind of psychic push. Feels like someone is, or that there might be collaborating factors in your real experience, maybe from the sides, beyond the veils, however you see the world. It feels like there is something working to push you forwards, whether you're ready for it or not, and that there might be this feeling that you're in a bit of a rush. So these energies are all very sort of palpable around the time of the new moon, but leading into it. And so the reason I'm sharing that is so that you can think about what you might want to prepare in time for it, So yeah, focus on where you're feeling rushed as well. Where are you feeling like you're being pushed to move forwards in your life, but you don't quite feel ready? And consider where that readiness, what skills or what experience or what tools might you need to feel ready for this next push. You might actually find that some of these skills and tools and behaviors that you might need are actually things that do come from the past. And so you almost need to look backwards to be able to move forwards. But there is this feeling that the time matrix that you're in right now is somehow very key to managing the new moon energy. So you can't just be in the moment. Obviously, like the idea of the new moon is that it happens, and in this moment, it's this fresh new moment. But it feels like this new moment has the past and the future really resting on it somehow, which, obviously just sounds really bizarre because, we've got this idea that time is linear and that, you move from one thing to another, to another, to another, to another. Who knows how the world really is? It appears that way. I'm not entirely sure that's how I feel it is. So at the time of the new moon, then, we've got this beautiful sun and moon conjunction at 20 degrees in the sun in Capricorn. Now the energy of Capricorn, now, I'm very well aware that I have people watching this channel who prefer sidereal astrology versus Western astrology. So I don't normally usually like to talk about the actual star signs themselves. I prefer to talk about the aspects because they're the same, whichever system you use. But the sort of energetics of the Capricorn energy is very much about, I think, success. I also think slow and steady. I also think power and responsibility. Also getting down, getting ready to do the job at hand. It's also quite possibly visionary, taking you outside of yourself in a sort of practical way, sort of reminding you of how much further you might need to go to be able to reach a goal. I think the Capricorn energy is very much about goal setting, and sometimes creating goals that just seem so big that they almost seem impossible, because that Capricorn energy is very kind of like, let's just bring it down. Let's just like make it smaller and smaller and smaller until we can manage each of these little steps. They have a long-term vision for sure, and it doesn't matter really how long it takes to get there. There is this kind of certainty. I'm on my path now, and if I just follow this path, I will get there. So you might also want to consider where this is taking place in your chart. Which house is this taking place in your birth chart? For me, it's in my third house. So I might be thinking about communities, how I show up, and in terms of how social do I want to be in the next few weeks. If this is in your ninth house, you might be thinking in terms of how do you release energy in a new way? How do you release your thoughts? How do you create a new start in terms of your belief systems and things like that? So there's lots of different ways of looking at this. Now, at the just after the new moon, we've got Venus in an exact trine to Chiron. Now, I really like this because if you think about the lead up to the new moon, we've got the moon in the square to Chiron, really reminding us of where we've got some leftover upsets. There's some things that we've not quite managed to get a grip on, and the frustration involved in having this feeling come back quite regularly. But after the new moon, with this beautiful Venus trine Chiron, there's this feeling of flow and a feeling of compassion, a feeling of forgiveness, a feeling of patience, a feeling like, it doesn't matter how long it takes. I've got you. You've got this, this kind of almost like a self-talk. It could also be that you've got some great women around you, or some great feminine practices that help you, or that you might find that creativity is really helpful in you expressing yourself in such a way that you are building yourself back in a way that's going to work for you. We've then also got the moon, as the moon leaves the energy of the sun, the moon will make a sextile to Neptune. Again, really kind of feminine in the energy. So, the moon and Neptune are in this lovely sextile. So you got this dreaminess, this psychic, sort of unreal kind of make-believe energy, where anything can become possible. So for the psychics that are watching this, for the dreamers that are watching this, for the musicians, the artists, the people that work with energetic fields, it's also very romantic, so Venus in a trine with Chiron could be the start of a healing relationship, or, for people who are really wanting to find themselves in a healing relationship, in a romantic relationship, in a relationship that can get stronger and kind of transcend time and space and the sort of reality, the grittiness of reality, then this could actually be quite a beautiful energy. And then finally, before the end of the day, the moon also makes a conjunction with Pluto, showing that this energetic is so strong and transforming. It almost feels permanent. It feels like whatever's going on with this new moon, if you really set your intention beautifully and with a solid sense of who you are, this could create a very strong transformation for you in the future. So I do think this is a strong one to go into the new year with. Other things I really like about this, even though these aren't exact aspects, we've got this beautiful sextile between Mars and Saturn. That gives us a lot more discipline than usual. And it gives us a lot more focus. So, we might have the energy to actually make our intentions tangible. We really might have this sort of manifestation field around us and feeling, yeah, it's possible. It's totally possible. And then you think, oh yeah, actually, I really feel like I've got the resources to do this. I really feel like I've got the energy to do this and fulfill this. Because often, there's a lot of people say, all you have to do is think it and it will happen. Well, I always think you have to feel it. So you have your intention, you feel it, you start to feel it in your body. And from that, usually your body wants to take particular actions. You get messages in your mind, you get visions or ideas as to what you need to do to be able to make this energy manifest. Well, Mars and Saturn here in their sextile, perfect. It's really helping. It's giving you the necessary resources, but also belief. You've also got this lovely trine between Mars and Jupiter, really giving you the self-belief and the confidence. So it's great that you've got discipline and confidence to be able to take action on the intentions that you're holding. I think that's rather lovely. Also, Venus, she's not just going into a trine with Chiron, she's also going into a trine with the North Node, and therefore also going into a sextile with the South Node. So, even if we've got the discipline and the confidence to move forwards with our ideas, Venus's position here is really giving us the gentleness and the encouragement and the kind of there. She's almost like hugging us. It's like we've got this Venus hug. It's like we've got the support of people that we might care to have the support from, and we might not all get that feeling of warmth and support from our parents. Not everybody does. Some people are very, very lucky and definitely feel like their parents are right behind them or by their side, or their best friends. Think in terms of your human support system. Who are they? Do you know who they are? Do you know where they are? They're likely to show up. If you need support, this is the new moon to actually ask for support. Isn't that wonderful? So this is a great time. I love this. I also notice, and this isn't coming in exactly at the time, but it's already starting to, I guess the energy starting like as a tiny whisper, and it will get stronger and stronger as the month goes by. And I think this is going to show up around the time of the full moon. But Venus in a square to Neptune is really showing the start of that energy where we might feel very I think, there's an imbalance with how open we might be and how magical we might be and how creative we might be. And it could be quite frustrating. I think, it's important also, as we're using this energy to manifest with, that we also just check. We need discernment. We need to really just double check. Can I trust what I'm feeling right now? But that's the sort of like main query that I would give this new moon energy. I actually think this is really quite a beneficial and useful new moon where lots of things are possible. Now, I'm really keen to dive a bit deeper. Are you ready? Let's have a look at some of the asteroids that are showing up. So I went to sereni.com, which I mentioned at the start, and put in the time and place and date of this. I set the place for GMT, London. That's the time zone I'm in, and it's the median point of all the times around the world. So I've used this as my data, and it's brought up these asteroids here that I would like to talk about. Now, there are quite a few astrologers who I've been quite inspired by, who used named asteroids. The one that I take the most inspiration from is Alex from, in fact, let's get his website up. Where is it? AlexAsteroidastrology.com. So it's worth checking out. If you like asteroids, then AlexAsteroidastrology.com is worth having a look at. I was in contact with him, I think, about 5 years ago now, talking to him about how he uses them and what he does. What he does is he looks at world events and he sees what named asteroids were where, and puts those into the charts. And all of a sudden, his forecast becomes so much more magnificent. There's a lot of detail. He also does look at the charts of well-known people, like if they suddenly die, and if there are some things revealed about their death, for instance. A little bit like, is it Cluedo, that game where you talk about who did it? Was it Professor Plum in the library with a candlestick? Whatever details are revealed in the media, he'll look for named asteroids with those particular names and see where they show up in the charts. And it's uncanny how the names of the asteroids just show up in the right place at the right time as these things are happening. It almost seems like there is some kind of language here with numbers and words that are telling a story that are there for us to interpret if we choose to look at them. So anyway, that's a massive aside. I really, really love the work of Alex and his wonderful website. And he spent quite a lot of time writing about some of the mythical named asteroids. And so anyway, I will be looking at some of his descriptions. So we've got asteroid now, Lachesis. I've also heard people pronounce it Lachesis. Now, it's interesting because this one is one of the three fates. And Lachesis or Lachesis is also a homeopathic remedy made from the Bushmaster snake. So that's one that I'm quite interested in, because Lachesis, which is one of the three fates, is about sudden death or determining the length of somebody's life and when that ends. Remember, this is a sort of like mythical like a mythical forecast. This adds an element of storytelling to this birth chart for this new moon. We've also got asteroid Apollo that I'm going to be looking at, and Apollo is absolutely really in a tight opposition to the sun and the moon. So this is very, very strong. Paying a bit of attention to him. Then there's asteroid Siwa. Now it's interesting because Siwa is referenced by quite a few different sources, and is also sometimes used or replaced for asteroid Shiva, the idea that Siwa might be Shiva. In this instance, I'm actually using Siwa in terms of the Eastern European goddess, which I'll talk about in a sec. And we've also got asteroid Urania, which is very much about astrology. I always use Urania to represent astrology. Now, for those of you that like forecasting and like drawing up charts, or maybe even using tarot cards, like sometimes you might do a tarot deck and there's something you want a bit of an extra explanation. And I do this when I'm using tarot. So I might like shuffle the cards again and then put in an extra card to get a little bit more clarity on something. I always think putting these asteroids in it's like taking an intuitive card, because sometimes you might find a couple of different asteroids in that describe the thing that you're wanting to represent in your chart. And so there's a little bit of intuition used. Now, there are some astrologers out there that look at the birth charts or the discovery charts of each of these asteroids. And I think that's also very wise, because then the actual birth chart of the discovery of the asteroid describes the energy that that asteroid is working with. But I'm not doing that in this instance because it would take a hell of a lot of work. And I'm just using their names. I'm choosing them to represent the things that their names are represented by, all the stories. So anyway, let's have a look at how this is forming this grand square, because it's quite interesting. Because also that grand square involves the south node and Urania, and the north node with Lachesis or Lachesis, however you want to pronounce it, and also Siwa. So let's talk about Apollo first of all, because Apollo is the one that's in opposition to the sun and the moon. So Apollo is a Greek-Roman god. He was the god of divine distance who sent or threatened from afar. Now, he does this through prophecies and oracles, and he uses prophets to tell the oracles of his knowledge of the future and the will of his father, Zeus, aka Jupiter. The god made men aware of their own guilt and purified them of it. That's interesting. He presided over religious law and the constitutions of cities and communicated with mortals through prophecies. So, you know, I got this from Britannica.com. If you want to use mythical astrologies, you can always type in goddess or god Apollo and see what comes up. There's always lots of descriptions. And then if you are aware of the energies of, oppositions and squares, you can form your own interpretations, and that's what I encourage you to do. So anyway, Apollo here. So it's almost like the god of divine distance. He's representing this innate knowing, and also this innate knowing that is going to be sending messengers. So on a bigger scale, this new moon, you may well find that there's a feeling of opposition from you and who you see as these divine messengers. You may well, around the time of the new moon, see that there are prophecies or information that's coming up, and you feel quite opposed to where that information is coming from. And so you might choose to ask yourself, well, why am I opposed to that? Am I shooting the messenger, or am I going to put myself in a receptivity to this information, or am I going to resist it? I would advise that you stay open to all sources of information as they come in, and then use your decision making. One of the reasons I say this is because Mercury is still in its long square with Neptune. Mercury has already been in the square. It was exact. He's separating from Neptune right now. But I remember when I was recording the forecast for January back in December, I was saying, we need to be really open to hearing everything and then making our mind up, not making your mind up as to which source is reliable or not, but actually being, holding that possibility that you might get truth from people who you know to lie. You might get lies from people who you think might be truthful. Right now it feels like there are mirrors going on left, right, and centre, and we're seeing reflections and projections in our life. So it's interesting. There's this idea that there could be information coming from afar, from a source that we may not already trust, that we might need to tune in on. And also the idea that we might be the recipient of a knowledge. We may well become an oracle in our own right from somebody who is afar from us. I mean, you don't get much further than an opposition, right? So you may well find that you are the recipient at the time of the new moon. If you're open, you may well get some sense of prophecy or future knowledge, or I don't know, a vision of what is coming up for you or what you need to do. So that's something to work into your new moon intentions, if that's what you're going to use them for. So that's Apollo down there. It's powerful, so at the time of the new moon, you might ask to work with the energy of powerful knowing. So Lachesis or Lachesis, I think it's Lachesis. I've heard it referred to in that way quite a few times. That is really quite tight around the North Node. And it's a marker of death and termination and the span of life, i.e. the duration of a person, organization, project, endeavor. It also refers to that which interrupts or interferes with a planned or proposed outcome or destination, assessment at the midpoint of a task, evaluation of progress, and redirection towards a goal. That's part of the interpretation that Alex Asteroid Astrology has given. And if you wanted to look more at that, there's a couple more paragraphs. It tells you a lot more about the three fates, for instance, of which Lachesis is one of them. So it's the idea that there is a span of life. It's a marker of death and termination, the duration of a person and project with an outcome and destination. That's kind of fascinating for me. And I want to look at Siwa, because she's got an opposite meaning, funnily enough. Goddess Siwa is living, being, and existing. She's a fertility and love goddess. She was worshipped throughout Eastern Europe. And here's another interpretation. This was from Wikipedia and also Pinterest, I think. May she be alive and live long, or a characterizing name, she who is alive. So we've got this idea of aliveness and living and being and existing connected to the North Node. And then also this idea of, is our time up? Have we come in with an actual end date? Have we come in with an end project? Like, was there a destination we were meant to arrive at a particular point? And also the observation of endpoints in your life in terms of the people around you, the projects you're working on. So, for instance, if in your life right now you are wanting to live more beautifully, feel more free and stuff, and you know that there's something you need to cut out, you've got like, I'm cutting this to be able to do this, which is live beautifully, she who lives beautifully. You know, you become that energy. So it's like life and death and the North Node all together in a square to the new moon. I'm also kind of fascinated with that. You know, I don't really follow the news that much. However, I know in Portugal, which is where I live, they've reported the highest death per day count ever on Christmas. And then a few days later, that count went even higher. And so the daily death rates are really, really high at the moment. And I've seen that mirrored and reported throughout other countries, like in the UK as well. I've seen or read similar things, that right now lots of people are dying, and they're unforeseen. You know, like there is a base level of what the usual amount of people dying is, and so there's an excess death that is unaccounted for. And so, and on a personal basis, you know, in the last week, I've heard about 3 or 4 people that I know that have passed away. And so it feels like that's becoming close and personal, you know, within my community, the community that I live in. Unexplained excess deaths, you know, a surprise really, you know, not people that you'd be expecting to just, you know, pass away suddenly. So there's that as well that I've observed. And I wonder what you've observed where you are. You know, is this a literal thing about life versus death, or is this about change and how you are adapting your life right now? So it's worth, you know, being open to all different interpretations and seeing what goes on with that. Now, in terms of Lachesis, I just want to read out a little bit about the homeopathy of it, because, crikey, where was it? Yeah, so the Bushmaster snake, called Lachesis, was named after one of the 3 fates. This is on Wikipedia, by the way. And hang on, where is it saying? I can't find it now. But anyway, in terms of the homeopathic medicine, now that's not to say it brings people back to life. I'm not making any claims whatsoever. I just, you know, when I saw the asteroid name, I thought, hang on, there's a homeopathic remedy with that name. Let's have a look at it. Lachesis talks about the energy of restlessness and uneasiness, not being able to enjoy tight clothing, and tight restrictions around us. You know, the actual Bushmaster snake itself, if you were to get bitten by a Bushmaster, which happens very rarely according to Wiki, it says that the venom of it creates increased permeability of blood vessels, causing edema, lowering blood pressure, and it has a coagulant activity, creating damage to capillary walls, but forming small clots that settle in organs and lungs and kidneys, and so on and so forth. And I think that might be why in the homeopathy of it, that it creates this feeling of restriction and constriction. So we might also, in terms of understanding that there is that like North Node connection to it, we might also think this new moon has the energy of us seeing constriction, and realizing that if we don't want to feel that constriction and that sort of clotting, that feeling of being stuck and constricted and not being able to do anything about it, that we might need to focus more on the Siwa, which is very much about fertility, love, and living, being, and existing, almost as if it's as simple as making a choice, whether we follow the narrative that things are getting tighter around us and that things are kind of choking us a little bit, like the strangleholds of things are coming in on us, or are we going to say, enough, That is one story that might appear to be going on right now. And yet I'm choosing still to feel into freedom, into joy, into the feeling of living, being and existing as freely and as gracefully as I can. So I think this is really representing a choice for us. And of course, we always have a choice, and yet it doesn't seem like we have a choice. Like if you turn your TV on and you're following media and stuff, it will be giving you these ideas, these horrible tragedies, these ideas of terrors, war. And I'm not denying that they may or may not be happening. You know, I'm not commenting on that because it's not actually in my field of experience right now. I don't have somebody that is in one of these areas it's experiencing this, so I can't talk about it with actual personal experience. What I'm saying is, where do we focus our attention right now? Are we going to focus our attention on horrors and being constricted in some kind of terrifying way that we cannot get out of? Or are we going to focus our attention on what feels joyful and free and liberating? That's not to say you can't care or show compassion for people that are struggling, by the way. I'm really not saying that like completely denying it, but where do you want to put your focus right now? It almost, like seeing this so close to the North Node is almost suggesting to me that where we consciously put our choice is determining how our life evolves. So if you're choosing to see the trauma, you're probably going to be going into more of it. And if you're choosing to focus on that feeling of generosity and love and sharing, and that there is possibility, and there's always possibility, things should be getting easier and easier. So that's you know, my first thoughts as I see these two come up. Now let's have a further look. So we've also got asteroid Urania, which I mentioned I use a lot to represent astrology. And here's what Alex Asteroid has to say about her. So she was the muse of astronomy, astrology. Obviously, before we had astrology and astronomy is separate, they were the same thing. And it was, you know, I've actually recorded something. I'll put a link up to it, actually. Hang on, where are we? So I actually spoke a little bit about the history of astrology and the separation between them and how and why that might have happened in a separate video. Anyway, she was the muse of astronomy, astrology, philosophy, and cosmology. Urania represents astrological interest or capacity, logic and rational thought, the ability to conceptualize and incorporate theoretical or abstract knowledge, and a gift for looking past small detail to a larger concept or theme, which is kind of what I was talking about, actually. So it's interesting. Urania in a conjunction with the South Node, it's almost, this is how I'm interpreting it, okay? And obviously this is just my opinion. As I see this in the chart, I think we've always known the answers. We've been here before. We've been here before where we've been encouraged to focus on short-term disaster. This is happening. Really eye-catching, short-term, tight, past small detail. And we've been able to switch off from it and keep to a larger concept or theme, which could be peace, joy. Actually, my peace of mind is more important right now to my life right now. And that maybe if we're all in a place of peace, or all in the best feeling place each of us can manage right now, that might actually have more of a purpose than anything else. You know, that if we are all connected, that we have a choice to connect even more through being as open as we can. This is sounding more and more like gibberish, but hey, this is just as it's coming at me. So yeah, she represents interest and capacity, logic and rational thought, but the ability to conceptualize and incorporate the theory and abstract knowledge. And she's got a gift for looking past that small detail. So yeah, it's almost like we're up here at the business end of having that very big choice. And yet at some point in the past, we've been able to know what to focus on. We've known the theory of where we need to put our attention. And right now we're out of the practice of it. That's how I'm seeing this. And of course, also down here, Apollo, if we remember, there's the idea that there's information from all sorts of different places, some of which we may not have considered worthy of our attention. And, I'm saying it's worth it's worth staying open to the fact that we may even get the prophecy or the knowledge ourselves. So I really see this grand square as an opening of knowledge. This is showing us that our knowledge can go anywhere it needs to, but if we stay open, we've got a choice as to whether we want to live, breathe, and like feel beautiful. Are we going to live with longevity and peace and kindness, or are we going to feel like things are cut short suddenly from these two asteroids? Which are we going to choose? It's interesting because I think I read this morning that was it Japan or China? I don't know. There was, sorry, obviously they're miles away from each other. I read that somewhere is already locked down, and I didn't even look any further to see the story, but the idea of lockdowns is coming back into the consciousness. If you look in your feeds, there's the story of lockdowns coming back, or the story of illness and decay and this, that, and the other coming back. So there you go. That's a thought, isn't it, for January new moon? So I wonder what that means. If we go back to the beginning where I'm talking about, actually, there's one more thing I think I wanted to point out. No. If we go back to the beginning where I'm talking about before the new moon and after the new moon, like this is very much about your personal set point, what you're going to work on, this idea of the pain and wounding that we've had, but also that we could be open for a dash of sudden illumination, with this trine with Uranus, and that we're ready to look at what we've learned from the past, even though we don't want to go back there, and actually start applying to a new future. It's kind of interesting. Especially seeing as we've got this feeling of increased healing and possibility and softness in our thinking. And also when the moon goes into a conjunction with Pluto, it gets that feeling of permanence, this feeling of, okay, these changes could really be certain. But, Pluto, I think, is one of the planets of pandemics and death and rebirth and all of that. And so with this conjunction, this upcoming conjunction with Pluto, and obviously if you've listened to the forecast for January, it's not that far away. I think on the 20th and 21st, 19th, 20th, 21st, according to wherever you are in the world, but between that 20th and 21st point, that both Pluto and the Sun are heading into Aquarius. And so we've got that sense of permanence and that sense of looking, like it is actually the Pluto Chasmi, the first one in the sign of Aquarius for the next 20 years. So this is quite a big one, setting a whole new pattern. Actually, it's happening in Capricorn just before it moves over. So it's the last one ending the pattern of the Pluto in Capricorn time, which is very much, I think, about corporations and corporate speak and takeovers and conglomerates and this whole idea of a very solid mass that has grown and is seeking power. But anyway, Pluto, I think, is about our fears and facing them, especially in the conjunction with the Sun. We've got this opportunity to face our fears up close and personal. And so if, as these very tight named asteroids, and these are the ones that were, I picked the asteroids out of the 1,000 asteroids. I picked the asteroids that had the tightest aspects to the Sun and the Moon at the time of the new moon. So it's fascinating that we've got this idea of life and death in a conjunction with the North Node. And then this idea of conceptual presence and knowledge, and the fact that we've been here before, we've understood this somehow. So anyway, that's just some thoughts for the new moon on the 11th of January. Like I said, it's a little bit different to how I usually do things because I've put in the asteroids. I'm about to bring back my Patreon page. And I think actually what I'm going to do in future is do all my asteroid based stuff, my slightly freakier stuff, my slightly more channeled stuff on Patreon. So if that's something that interests you, please do go to Feel Good Astrology Patreon page. I am literally just about to bring it back from the brink of where it's been. So it might take a little while to get going, but yeah, I'm going to be putting stuff there. Stuff that maybe is a little bit too freaky to put onto YouTube. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this slightly different pace and the slightly more conceptual, theoretical channeled kind of way of looking at the new moon. But anyway, I wish you a beautiful new moon. I hope January is going really well for you so far, and I hope to stay connected with you. Lots of love from Portugal. Bye for now.